Upper Moons, aka the pinnacle of Muzan's creations. Over centuries of cultivation, these are the most powerful demons in existence. Even the strongest of Hashiras are incapable of taking them down on their own. But what if I told you Muzan's first and most vicious Upper Moon was also a demon slayer? One with a completely new and original breathing style.
No way!
In the Infinity Castle arc, we finally learn more about the Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo, the brother of none other than the strongest demon slayer, Yoriichi. His life prior to being a demon was tragic, with a chain of events that led him to choose the path of self-destruction in regards to his identity and the relationship he had with his brother. And of course, it was Muzan who exploited this, turning Kokushibo into the strongest pawn to use against the man he feared most. But to understand the full story of the strongest demon moon of all time, we must first rewind 500 years back to the Sengoku period. Kokushibo, originally known as Michikatsu Tsukigini, was born as a twin alongside his brother Yoriichi. However, their birth was marked by two grave misfortunes. One, being born as twins was seen as a bad omen, as it would eventually lead to bloodshed in deciding the family's rightful heir. And two, his brother Yoriichi was born with a strange, ominous mark on his head. Not wanting to deal with all of that drama, their father decided to kill Yoriichi, completely altering the twins' life going forward. However, thanks to their mother's angry intervention to keep their son alive, a deal was made to send Yoriichi to a temple when he turned 10 years old to become a priest. In the same vein, he was treated like a spare. At a glance, one would think that Kokushibo was born blessed whilst the other twin was cursed. I mean, they were given two different rooms, clothes, education, and even food, clearly indicating he was the one set to inherit the family legacy and fortune, hence he was treated and brought up royally. This disparity in treatment caused Kokushibo to feel pity for his brother, as he would always cling onto his mother's side. He felt so sorry that Yoriichi hadn't spoken a single word since the day he was born. I mean, his family even presumed that he was deaf because of this. So instead of exploiting his privilege, Kokushibo would go behind their father's back and keep Yoriichi company, playing games like dice to flying kites. Unfortunately, their father found out about this and severely reprimanded Kokushibo, forcing him to stop playing with Yoriichi. Even then, to let his brother have something to play with, Kokushibo gave him a handcrafted flute. Truly the pinnacle of entertainment. Okay, but seriously, it wasn't a grand gesture by any means, but as we learn later on, even a crude, poorly made flute from his brother meant the world to Yoriichi because he didn't have anyone or anything else in his life. However, things between brothers were about to change. Kokushibo, being from a prestigious family, was assigned an expert swordsman to train him in his journey to become the next heir. But one day, the brother he always assumed to be deaf spoke, questioning if it was Kokushibo's dream to become the strongest samurai in the land. If the idea of hearing his brother's voice for the first time wasn't unsettling enough, the following statement by Yoriichi surely was, as the frail and supposed cursed child proclaimed his own goal was to become a samurai himself, whilst smiling for the first time. Kokushibo found it weird and almost unnerving that a weak-ass failure right from birth, who couldn't even leave his mother's side and hadn't even talked or smiled, could declare something so bold. After all, samurais were supposed to fight with their lives on the line and risk losing all they are familiar with. But what followed this insane proclamation to become the greatest swordsman was something nobody expected. Just for the fun of it, Kokushibo's trainer handed the 7-year-old Yoriichi a wooden blade to test his skills, and it turned out Yoriichi was a total prodigy, ending up striking not one, not two or three, but 4 vital spots on the trainer. This thoroughly surprised Kokushibo, who had never before landed a single blow on his sensei through all his time training. Yearning to understand how he achieved such skills, Kokushibo reluctantly begged his brother to teach him the secret, which would end up being the early stages to sun breathing. Though Yoriichi, after experiencing the feeling of causing pain to another, only expressed his distaste for fighting and stated that he no longer wanted to become a samurai, but eventually did explain how he saw the transparent world through his mark, arc. This is what allowed Yoriichi to become extraordinary. On hearing this revelation from his brother, Kakoshibo's life shattered, as if everything he ever knew was a total lie. His brother wasn't cursed, but blessed by the heavens. This made Kakoshibo realize that even though he was putting his everything into becoming the greatest samurai, he would never be able to hold a candle to Yoriichi at the turtle-like pace he was going. All of this ignited an extreme jealousy towards his brother, who didn't want to strive on the path of excellence despite being bestowed everything to obtain it. Fueling the envy Kakoshibo developed in his heart, everyone began changing their views on his brother. Because Yoriichi's immense potential was now exposed, Kakoshibo feared his father would deem him less worthy and swap their roles, sending Kakoshibo to the temple in Yoriichi's place. But with this sinking feeling, Kakoshibo continued life as normal, until one night his brother informed him that their mother had passed away. Rather than grieving or clinging to his brother, Yoriichi declared that he would be leaving the house to go to the temple he was destined to go to immediately, even though he still had 3 years left before he turned 10. And so, as he said his goodbyes, Yoriichi thanked his brother for everything he had done, treasuring the flute he had been gifted. Despite hearing such shattering news, Kakoshibo couldn't say anything back to Yoriichi and just watched him leave, disturbed at how his brother treasured something as useless as a flute that couldn't play a tune. But it was only later that Kakoshibo discovered that Yoriichi left the family house because he was being contemplated as the successor instead of his brother. The last thing Yoriichi wanted was to be the reason his brother's dream faded away from his grasp, and so he decided to leave it all behind. In fact, Kakoshibo also learned the real reason Yoriichi was always clinging to their mother. And no, it wasn't because he was frail or weak like a little baby, it was because he had the ability to detect weakness in the body and knew much before anyone else that his mother's left side was getting weaker. Thus, he acted as a support for their mother as she grew more feeble. Such a sweet and selfless thing to do. This inspired Kakoshibo to better himself. Never mind. His jealousy just grew even further into hatred, as he'd realized that Yoriichi truly was a complete genius. With his brother's absence, all Kakoshibo could think of was his inadequacy compared to his younger twin. This stemmed dark and hateful thoughts, such as wishing his brother's death, believing his existence defied nature. However, 10 years had passed and Yoriichi vanished without a trace. I thought it was only the dads that did that. Seriously though, their father did send a messenger to bring his prodigal son back, but Yoriichi was nowhere to be found, hence presumed to be dead. This news to Kakoshibo made him believe that his wish had finally come true. With Yoriichi gone, Kakoshibo moved on as a simple samurai to live a peaceful life. He took over the family, married a beautiful woman, and was even blessed with children who would later be the ancestors of Yoriichiro and Muichiro Tokito, the Mist Hashira. But despite having all that any average person could ask for, Kakoshibo found his tranquil life rather boring. Well, as they say, be careful what you wish for. Because one day a demon attacked the encampment he was staying in. However, in an unwanted twist of fate, the person who saved him was none other than Yoriichi. He apologized to Kakoshibo for being late and not being able to prevent the deaths of his subordinates, though Kakoshibo noted his brother's faultless character. In fact, all he could think about was how gosh damn OP his brother had become. He was almost as powerful as private internet access. I'm sure PIA needs no introduction because you all know what a VPN is, right? How do I put it? Well, when you guys are browsing the internet, it's basically the equivalent of you sending your terrible anime opinions into one big group chat. We all saw it and there is no hiding. But PIA protects your internet connection and hides your IP address to stop this happening, thus protecting your digital life from weirdos who want to see what you get up to online. Something I wish I had sooner. PIA also lets you access region-locked content such as the latest anime episodes not available in your country. For example, I'm from the land of tea and biscuits, so I can't watch Hunter x Hunter on Netflix. But by changing my location online using PIA to the US, I can. They've also just launched a brand new feature. With just one PIA subscription, you can protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can use our link in the description and pinned comment to start from as little as $2.03 per month with 4 months free. So download the world's most transparent VPN today, available on all platforms. Witnessing Yorichi's godlike swordsmanship and strength had destroyed Kokoshibo's serenity as it reignited the burning jealousy and hatred which was long forgotten. Kokoshibo wanted to make Yorichi's skill his own, and so he did what any normal person would do, and yeah, he went to go get the milk and never came back. He literally abandoned his wife and kids in pursuit of achieving the same level of power as his brother, becoming everything Yorichi didn't want him to be. Yorichi sought a simple life and found Yuta, but this was taken away from him. In fact, everything that had happened to Yorichi was always beyond his control, like being born with the mark, to being mistreated whilst growing up with his father, and then everything he fell in love with parted ways with him, such as being separated from his brother, the death of his mother, and then his wife and potential child. All my guy wanted was a family, and this is exactly what Kokoshibo abandoned just to pursue his ego. In this story, Yorichi clearly represented someone blessed by God to balance the world in opposition to the evil created by Muzan. But the person to embody this blessing had to be freed from vices such as pride and, most importantly, have the understanding of human life. Instead of Yorichi abandoning his dream to become a samurai due to the pain people felt, he now used this same feeling of empathy to push him into fighting the demons, as he wanted to put an end to the pain they caused. This tragedy brought forth a powerful version of Yorichi, who would then go on to teach the Demon Slayer's breathing techniques he learned through having the mark. Which brings us back to Kokoshibo, as after his encounter with his brother, he too joined the Demon Slayer Corps under his tutelage in an attempt to learn the extremely powerful sun breathing. This was a technique that Yorichi himself had already developed, but it was only he who could master it. Even though he tried to teach it to others, he failed to impart the same technique. Thus began the different breathing forms that were created around each person's strength through modifying the style. Yes, that's right. Yorichi went from being banished to the Shadow Realm at birth to being the most influential man in Demon Slayer's history. Under Yorichi's guidance, Kokoshibo, as well as many others, awakened their Demon Slayer marks. With this development, Kokoshibo thought that he could finally catch up to Yorichi, but in the end, even he couldn't use the sun breathing technique and had to settle for making a style of his own, moon breathing. With this talent, he could produce and control hundreds of crescent moon shaped blades from his katana. Over the years, he continued to improve the moon breathing style, establishing over a dozen techniques. This led to a point where Kokoshibo believed that their sword styles would end up dying out after them, as no other samurai could possibly come near to their perfection. However, as Kokoshibo shared these concerns to his brother, he learnt the true insignificance of his existence. Yorichi, who he had seen to be beyond the laws of nature and blessed by God, told Kokoshibo that he was wrong, and they are not as great as he makes them out to be. Rather, they are just a fragment of humankind's long history, and even right now, those that will surpass them are still uttering their first cries. There is nothing to worry about. This level of humanity shattered Kokoshibo once again, and as a person who lives his life with pride, he couldn't bear to hear these words. Throughout his life, Kokoshibo believed he was born lucky, and that he was to be the role model for his younger twin. In fact, that's exactly how Yorichi saw him, but deep down he felt lesser than the very person who admired him. Not being able to master his brother's sun breathing left a bitter taste in Kokoshibo's mouth, but knowing there would be others surpassing himself made it even worse. However, what flipped Kokoshibo's life upside down was the news that all the other Demon Slayers soon began to die due to the birthmark they had gained. Though it had boosted their strength dramatically, it came at a very costly price. None of them could make it past the age of 25.
Well, coincidentally enough, there actually was a solution to avoid this impending death. That's when Kokoshibo came across Yorichi's sworn enemy, the demon lord himself, Muzan, and received an offer to become a demon. With the fear of death now firmly planted in Kokoshibo's mind, Muzan saw his opportunity to exploit him. Now obviously you're probably thinking, there's no way anybody is gonna fall for this trick. Well, Kokoshibo does. Kokoshibo's inferiority complex had gotten stronger as time went by, which eventually made his his desire for strength become like a competition to prove his worth. Despite having the talent and skills, there wasn't enough time in the world for Kokushibo to close this gap. Muzan told Kokushibo that becoming a demon would mean he could live forever and perfect his breathing style, thus having a real chance at truly becoming the strongest samurai. He took 3 days to become a demon, but it was only 60 years later that he met his brother once again, which was the most unfortunate of meetings. Kokushibo never expected to see his brother live past 25, yet he stood before him over the age of 80. As Kokushibo questions on how the heck is his brother the only person still alive with the mark, Yoruichi falls into tears, as this was the first time he had witnessed his twin's demon transformation. And boy, it was uglier than he imagined. Though now standing as enemies and opposites, the dichotomy between the two reactions portrayed a parallel in their feelings. Yoruichi pitied Kokushibo and was deeply saddened seeing his loved one in that state. Similarly, Kokushibo was horrified to witness his younger twin become old and decrepit. At that moment, for the first time, he believed his brother to be weak and nothing like his former glory. Man, was he in for a surprise. But instead of hatred, which he would normally have felt in response to Yoruichi's antics, Kokushibo, like never before, felt something welling up inside of him. This could have been looked at as sadness, guilt, or even Kokushibo's own confliction he had towards his brother. Because without admitting it, Kokushibo did in fact love his brother, but the accumulation of jealousy put him on a path of no return. And now, being a demon under Muzan, he had no choice but to kill his other half. However, these newfound feelings were instantly blown away as Yoruichi drew his blade. The old decrepit man who was supposed to be past his prime was in fact not, and in that moment Kokushibo knew he effed up. The aura alone from Yoruichi's fighting stance made Kokushibo his pants, and within seconds, despite his old age and apparent blindness, Yoruichi with perfect form had already struck and sliced across his neck. Not even old age had waned the shine and strength Yoruichi had in the least, just like the sun itself. The feeling of being absolutely useless in comparison to his brother was once again relit in Kokushibo's heart. Sadly for Kokushibo, becoming a demon didn't change anything. He was always going to live in the shadows of his brother. After all, Yoruichi was the burning sun, whereas Kokushibo was the dull moon that only reflected his brother's light. Even learning Yoruichi did the impossible by outliving the curse of the mark taunted Kokushibo's choices in life. He questioned, why did it always have to be him? Why was his brother the special one? After all, they were born as twins. All Kokushibo was left with was hatred and a deep desire in wanting to kill his brother. However, he knew this jealousy and pride would not amount to much, as like before, it never had changed his outcome. Kokushibo anticipated his certain death by his brother's blade. However, it never came. Yoruichi, in the midst of battle, had died of old age, standing proudly in a fighting stance. Kokushibo's rage knew no bounds, as his brother had surpassed all expectations, dying unbeaten and unharmed. Even someone as fearsome as Muzan had not just even failed to scratch Yoruichi, but was also undeniably afraid of him. Yoruichi had become all that Kokushibo wanted to be, and learning about his inadequacy again, he attacked Yoruichi's lifeless corpse. But even this was a triumph for Yoruichi, as this attack broke the very flute Kokushibo had gifted him in their childhood. Even after all these years, Yoruichi still carried and kept that flute safe to his heart as a sign of their relationship. This derailed Kokushibo even further, and he couldn't help but cry when he saw how much his brother still admired him despite his transformation. And although envying him for the majority of his life, he was unable to cut the bond with his brother, which is why he kept the now broken flute for himself. Following this, Kokushibo became the strongest upper moon and second strongest strongest demon in existence, just behind Muzan. In fact, Muzan relied on him the most, as Kokushibo assisted in eliminating all those who had a connection with Yoriichi and the Breath of the Sun. Remember, Muzan had picked Kokushibo as he saw talent and a need for a demon who could rival the strongest of the demon slaying core. Kokushibo is a user of total concentration breathing, a marked demon slayer from his human days, and has the highest concentration of Muzan's blood, which made him the most formidable. And even after turning into a demon, Kokushibo still continued the way of the sword. In fact, his blood demon art, called Crescent Moon Blades, complements his combat style, as it allows him to control a detached portion of his body in the shape of his katana, being able to freely change the shape and size, allowing him to use his sword at a longer distance than most swordsmen. These powers and skills brought fear to even the other demon moon. Akaza and Doma were the only two who would tread close to his madness, but as depicted, Kokushibo's strength incredibly outweighed the two. With one slice and in a blink of an eye, Akaza's arm was sliced off. This was the same beast who took down the formidable fire Hashira Rengoku. In fact, as one of the oldest demons for around 1000 years, he fought and massacred a plethora of demon slayers, gaining valuable fighting experience. For example, whilst clashing with Saneme, Kokushibo mentions that he earned a lot of experience battling against a similarly powerful Wind Hashira during the Sengoku period. Now this makes a lot of sense, since Kokushibo could also view the transparent world with his 6 eyes. No, not those eyes, I'm talking about these ones. Yeah, these creepy ones allowed him to see his opponent's muscles, blood flow and joint movement, like his brother Yoriichi. Along with being boosted in every single category due to these powers, especially, you know, having quickened vision, perception and great augmentation of reflex and speed, it was also a power that helped him deduce that despite his human surname, Sugikuni, being extinct over the time, Muichiro was his descendant. He praised Muichiro's skills, stating that it must be due to his blood that had been passed down throughout generations. Kokushibo gets so impressed that he even offers Muichiro the chance to become a demon, so that he could not only regrow his arms, but also gain enormous power. However, sadly, before Kokushibo could finish his recruitment, Genya interrupts this conversation. This then prompts Kokushibo to continue his parental beatings. Kokushibo is easily able to decipher how Genya's abilities work by observing that he can consume demons to achieve power by gazing into his cellular makeup. He quickly concludes that Genya was not the same as another replica demon from 300 years ago, and the only way to kill him is through decapitation, just like all other demons. But before he could do that, Genya was saved by his brother Sanemi. After a huge scuffle and Kokushibo's delight at the prospect of battling such competent Hashira, he was ready to deliver a major blow until Gyome, the stone Hashira, arrived. Yep, one after another, they kept piling up. With this immense back and forth struggle, Gyome reveals his Demon Slayer mark, which he had intended to keep for Muzan. But of course, Kokushibo reveals that he too has the Demon Slayer mark and shows pity for Gyome when he exposes its downfall, being death at the age of 25. Following this law, which Kokushibo knew quite well, Gyome, who was 27 years old, would be dead by the end of the night. But Kokushibo, being the nice guy, gives Gyome the opportunity to become a demon in order to survive. Wait a minute, what is this dude? A demon life salesman? Kokushibo's behavior of targeting slayers and turning them into demons must have been due to his guilt and loneliness of not wanting to be the only betrayer. This is even showcased with the new Upper Moon 6, Kaigaku. Though the sentiment he portrays is to be the one to fulfill the achievement of excellence, in reality, he would never want someone other than Muzan to surpass him. In fact, things takes an unexpected turn when Gyome calls out Kokushibo for leaving part of the truth regarding how there was one who had the mark and survived beyond 25. We know Yoriichi lives rent-free in Kokushibo's mind, and so this triggered him, giving the Hashiras a window of opportunity opportunity to land a killing blow. Genya, who had eaten not only Kokushibo's hair, obtaining his DNA, had also swallowed a shattered piece of his sword to obtain Kokushibo's skills. Genya fires a barrage of bullets that sprouted into trees, completely trapping Kokushibo, who remembers the time he met Yoriichi again 400 years ago, reminding him of the taste of defeat. As their swords all glow crimson, Kokushibo recalls his brother's prophecy, marveling at how the next generation have risen to exceed them. Once Kokushibo's head is chopped off, his feelings quickly turn to rage, which pushes him to regrow his head. Seriously, Kokushibo starts to rejoice, bragging to himself that now that he has defeated death via beheading, all assaults directed at him would be pointless, and that the sun would be the only way to kill him. However, when he sees himself reflected in Saneme's sword, his elevation is replaced with bewilderment, because he finally saw his ugly ass face. Disgusted by his new look, he remembers his previous goals of becoming the country's greatest samurai and questions whether the road he had chosen was the one he really desired. This second of hesitation was all that the Hashiras needed, as Gyomei was able to break Kokushibo's skull with his flail. He attempted to regenerate, but due to his own descendant, Muichiro's crimson blade embedded in his body, Kokushibo's skin begins to dissolve and he is unable to execute his blood demon art. In his disintegration, he laments about his desires to be like his brother and how he had failed miserably in that endeavor. As he clearly recalls the face of his brother, he is forced to confront this realization. Even as his whole life flashed before him, he acknowledged that he had abandoned everything and had accomplished nothing. In fact, he even made it worse by killing his only surviving blood relative and breaching the samurai code. Whilst in his last moment, he contemplated his existence, reaching out to his brother for clarification before passing away fully, leaving just a shattered flute behind, representing the broken relationship between two brothers. If you guys want to learn more about the Crimson Blade that killed Kokushibo, then make sure to check this video out next.